Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome into the DFS Minute. I'm your host, Michael Rathburn, aka Rath. You can find me on Twitter at FantasyWrath. And this morning's topic here on rotocurve.com is FanDuel releasing their NFL salaries and player salaries and their contests. Some of the contests have gone live, some big tournaments. So we're going to do a brief overview of that, kind of why they need to do it, what the thinking is behind it. Not going to get into the individual player salaries just yet. We're going to save that for future shows and start breaking some of that stuff down early on. Again, it's basically 6 to 8 weeks out before the season starts. So we're not going to get into a whole lot of analysis because so many things are going to change, obviously, over the next 4 to 6 weeks. But we can do kind of a top line overview and kind of get a feel for, some potential week one games. I'm going to cover a few of them and, just kind of break down position battles and who potentially could be, an extreme value play leading into week one NFL. So let's get into it. FanDuel had announced with a preview article on Monday that they were going to go ahead and release their NFL player salaries and contests on Tuesday. So that was exciting. It was fun. And it's become really kind of an industry day, so to speak, in terms of, they keep pushing it earlier and earlier each year as things get bigger. Let's hope they don't get into the early part of July, because I think then it really starts to become a little bit of an issue. But I think, kind of coincides, you got Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel that's really moved over to football now, almost exclusively, with the exception of some daily baseball. And so, look, football's on everybody's minds. Training camp is starting. All the preview magazines are coming out. And that's really what leads me into why FanDuel is doing what they're doing. There's a couple of different reasons that I know I can think of. One is FanDuel has always been very heavy on advertising in fantasy football magazines to the season-long players. So they typically buy the back cover. Or they actually will buy the inside cover as well, and then even possibly have an insert ad inside the magazine. So they've been very heavy on magazine ads. And as much as people want to say that they don't buy magazines anymore, that might be you or I, but the average Joe public that's playing in a season-long 12-team league, on Yahoo, ESPN, or CBS is still buying magazines. The sales are still there. There's still a number of different magazines that are out there. Yes, the information can be dated, but it's really a way, what people want is something tangible. They want something that they can carry around. I can just give you I'll just give you my, experience in terms of working in an office. Okay. I kind of don't publicize that I'm in the fantasy sports industry, only because I don't want people to bother me. It kind of happened that way at another company where, a lot of people were hitting me up that all played in the same league, and I did not play in that league. And it kind of got out of hand. So, when you're making trades for people and making people's rosters and drafts, it gets a little crazy. So anyway, I don't really publicize it, but what I do is I kind of observe. And what I will tell you is that here's what I see. The guys and gals that play in these office leagues, they have these magazines and they carry them around with them at work. They read them at lunch. They read them on their break. They talk about it with their fellow coworkers, and it's very, very competitive. For a casual league, it's extremely competitive, and I can get into a little bit of a story with one of these leagues last year that was crazy. On another DFS minute with a husband and wife situation, it almost was like a written out of the script from the league. It was that intense. So look, these magazines are still being bought, they're still being read, and these are people that are most likely not playing daily fantasy sports. So when they see the ad on the back cover and they see the picture of Beer Maker and they see the picture of a guy holding $1 million check, it's going to start to resonate. And that's really what it is. It's like, hey, what is this FanDuel thing? Let me check it out. Let me go online now and check it out while I've got time. And, oh, wow, the contests are posted. The player salaries are up. How does this work? So FanDuel basically has like a 6-week education process that they need to educate new players on, how this daily fantasy sports NFL thing works. So that's really where the big thing comes in. Also, too, it brings in a lot of traffic to the site and people who might potentially play baseball. So it gets the money on the site now, gets people to start engaging in the product now, get educated in the product now, and then also, kind of just builds that branding. So that's really what FanDuel is looking for. in this situation in terms of why they release so early. Also, to get ahead, get a leg up on the competition doesn't hurt. And, they can release their information now on player salaries, etc. They don't need to say anything about what their player championship is going to be at the end of the year. They don't even need to say anything until probably a week leading up to week one. And a matter of fact, I don't even know if they need to do it week one, because there's so much traffic on the site week one that you almost, kind of want to, save some of the stuff for week two. But you've got limited number of weeks that you can run qualifiers, so they do need to run in week one. I'm just giving you an analogy that the traffic's going to be there week one, regardless of what kind of multi-million-dollar prize pool is thrown out there. What this means is, look, are there going to be issues with player salaries? Yes, there will be some issues with some player salaries. You can't help that guys get hurt. And there are certain position battles that are still ready to take place, but let's face it, the elite players are locked in. Their values aren't going to change all that much. It's really the guys who, are at the, the mid-tier or the bottom, the minimum salary, that could potentially get a starting skill position based on injury or training camp, etc. But for the most part, I remember like maybe Rashard Jennings last year. I think Jeremy Maclin. I know Kelvin Benjamin was pretty cheap, but that had nothing to do with, the Kelvin Benjamin thing was he was a rookie. The Rashard Jennings was that he moved to another team. And Jeremy Maclin was that he was injured last year. And the way that FanDuel salary algorithm worked is typically if a guy was hurt the previous year, they come in pretty cheap the following season. So I haven't had a chance to go and dig in depth into the player salaries. We're going to do that for later shows and start talking about that daily. But, for the most part, I don't remember anything that was, crazy last year. I do remember Maclin being heavily owned. I know everybody was on Rashard Jennings, etc. But again, it wasn't something that hurt the product. And the people that are complaining about it don't really have a clue as far as why they're doing this. And that's kind of why we're educating, that you really need to understand why they're doing it. And it's not going to hurt the product. It's only going to help grow the industry. Now, let's talk about the contest. Now, the contest, this is pretty crazy. We talked about it in our forums. One of our users on RotoCurve had talked about, do we think a millionaire contest is going to be run every week? And it was actually something I was going to talk about on DFS Minute. Is without a doubt, I had predicted that they're going to run a millionaire contest every single week. And I think it's both going to be FanDuel and DraftKings that are going to crown millionaires every single week. Now, how they do it, we know from the Eilers research study that typically new players like to play tournaments $1 to $5. So we can't necessarily crown a millionaire for that amount. It's just not feasible. But we also have found that the $20 to $25 to $27 price range, really $20-25, based on Millionaire Maker, and then also Sunday Million and things like the Slam and stuff like that. $20 to $25 really seems to be the sweet spot for the entry fee that people are willing to play. The average casual player, the intermediate player, is willing to throw $20 or $25 into a contest for a shot to become a millionaire or win $100,000. So, that's really where these price points are going to be at. And that's really what FanDuel did. They came out with a $5 million Sunday Million, $1 million first prize, a $223,000 entry, or, give or take. So it's going to be pretty crazy. Look, and this brings up an issue is, this is marketing. You want to say that you're going to crown a millionaire, but now we're starting to get into that gray area again that we talked about, and it's luck versus skill. And it's starting to become, some of these tournaments are becoming, we talk about the G word, but I think the L word, and there's a couple of L words that are out there. I think the L word is something that we're going to have to start to be concerned about, because fantasy sports has been carved out as a game of skill under the UIGEA. And when we start having that L word, which could be luck or lottery, come in, that's going to be an issue, because we know that the lottery is something completely different. It's, lottery basically is a state regulated thing where you pick random numbers and a random generated, there's really no skill involved in the lottery at all. And when you run at 223,000, you know, and I'm not saying that for FanDuel also, you know, it can be an issue for, you know, some of these millionaire makers on PGA is it's becoming, you know, a little bit gray. And that's something that, you know, we certainly want to keep an eye on is, you know, is this going to be a situation where kickers and defenses determine who wins $1 million? And that's kind of where a lot of the grumblings are coming from the skill guys, from the, you know, the pros and the skill guys, is they're saying, you know, that's really why we wanted FanDuel to eliminate the kickers, because what's going to happen is you're going to have to just have random combinations of kickers and defenses, and throwing in a bunch of multi-entries just to figure out and get the right combination. It's not really based on skill. You know, kickers and defenses are, for the most part, the kicker, the variance from week to week. Look, it's just something that the kicker scoring doesn't vary that much from week to week, but it's not predictable in terms of what I mean by that is I'm not contradicting myself. What I mean is, you know, a guy can go out there and kick 6 field goals on a crappy team, and you know that can decide who wins $1 million, and you really can't predict that. You can predict teams that are going to score or get close to it with Vegas data or matchups and things like that. But you know, Stephen Gostkowski is not going to be the #1 kicker every week. It could be you know, somebody like Sebastian Janikowski that kicks 4 50-yard field goals and throws everybody's, you know, week into a tizzy. So, and on the defensive side, defenses are extremely variant from week to week based on the touchdowns being scored, you know, the ability for touchdowns. So I think that's kind of where there's some concern is like, you know, those are some things that we need to definitely take into consideration. So, but, you know, that's just something that we're going to talk about in future DFS minutes and kind of bring up some issues, you know, revolving around NFL DFS and large entry fields and things like that, and really kind of, you know, how you need to navigate those and play these, because I'll tell you this, will I play in these? Yes, but I'm probably going to play 1 entry. That's really what it comes down to. And so let's talk about some of the contests that they posted. You know, we got a $5 million contest. We've got a $1 million contest at $5 that's really getting a lot of play. $100,000 first prize. And then also they posted a couple of single entry, $1 and $2 at 100K. So that's nice. We got some big single entry tournaments. Still, you know, you've got 50,000 entries, 100,000 entries, which is tough, but you know, I do like the single entry aspect, and I'd like to see them do a lot of, like, say, $5, $10, $25,000 tournaments at the $1 and $2 level. I think those are a lot more attainable and achievable for some new players to try to, you know, to look into. So let's talk about and wrap it up, you know, just some of the games that I look at for week 1. There's kind of 4 games that stick out, and I'm not including the Pittsburgh-New England game because that's on Thursday. But let's, you know, we're going to be focused on higher scoring games, potential higher scoring games, really. And the 4 games that really stick out for me in week 1 is Philadelphia, Atlanta, New York Giants, Dallas, Baltimore, Denver, and Green Bay, Chicago. So, you know, we're going to focus on some of the players from those games, see if we can build lineups around those particular matchups, just strictly based on what games we think are going to be higher scoring, a little bit close, you know, things like that. So we'll get into that a little bit further, but just kind of a preview for you guys to, you know, start thinking about week 1 NFL. We are in the middle, you know, still in the midst of DFS baseball, a lot of qualifiers going on. And we actually have a free roll with Fantasy Feud coming up on Friday that we can talk more about, but excited about that as well. So that's going to be it for today's DFS Minute. And as we always say here at RotoCurve, stay classy, DFS.